everyone. My name's Alexa. I am a running coach and a sports massage therapist, and I also have hip dysplasia. I had my left periacetabular osteotomy a few months ago, and right one, well, I don't know, it's a bit complaining at the moment. I thought I would share with you today a little bit about running when you have hip dysplasia. It's a little bit of a complex topic, and a few things to say up front. It is different for everybody because we are all so unique anyway, and we're also unique on our sort of spectrum and different complexities with our hips. So there's absolutely no one size fits all approach. Running is a very high impact and a very repetitive sport, and both of those things make it high risk for anybody who's got a sort of musculoskeletal issue, because those two factors make that loading really, really high, and you have to be able to control the movement really, really well in order to be able to run injury-free. It also means that from the perspective of hip dysplasia, you do absolutely need to check with your doctor, surgeon, as well as, I would say, your physiotherapist or physical therapist before you start running, because the high forces involved and the repetitive nature of those forces in running will mean that you have to have a few kind of assessments and have kind of passed all of those before you can be confident that you can run safely. In future videos I might touch on some of the things I might look for from a running coach's point of view, but that's kind of what to look at once your surgeon is happy and your physical therapist is happy with you returning to run. So things like bone healing, muscle activation, and as sort of basic as it sounds, the fact that your walking gait is absolutely nailed. You really do have to be able to walk before you can run when it comes to hip dysplasia. So I've not been able to run for a few years now. A lot of that, in a sense, has been down to choice, and it's because I know from looking at photos of myself, perhaps running a local race, or looking at my shadow as I'm running or walking, that I cannot walk evenly, and therefore running would be a very, very bad idea, a very quick way to annoy my hip and also upset all sorts of other stuff. So with that in mind, why do we need to be a little bit sort of wary when it comes to hip dysplasia and running? It's back to the repetitive nature and the high forces. When we run, and this is even in the kind of standard population of runners that I work with, not our little subset of hip dysplasia sufferers, what I see a lot of is weakness in the glutes, the muscles in the bum that control the movement of our leg in the hip socket in all sorts of different ways. I think a lot of that is down to our modern lifestyle. We spend a lot of our time sat at our computers, sat on our bums, our glutes sort of switch off a little bit gradually, and they are such important muscles for running. They should be the most powerful muscle in the body, driving the leg backwards when we run. And there's also a whole host of stabilising muscles in our core and around our hips and into our glutes that is stabilising the movement of our pelvis. So our pelvis should be like a really strong, stable foundation when we run. There's a little bit of rotation, it counter-rotates from our shoulders, but it should be really nice and stable in the middle. And what I don't want to see is that those hips or that pelvis dropping to the side when we run, because when we do that, often we end up leaning the other way to compensate. Some of you might have heard of the Trendelberg gait. That's what ends up creeping in a little bit when we run. And I also want those really strong, hopefully, glute muscles to be controlling the rotation of the leg in the hip socket. So perhaps if you've run before, you might have been behind another runner in a race or in a group run, and you might have noticed people that have a knee that comes in as they push off or as they land, kind of collapses inwards a little, and their foot flicks out to the side as a result. That is a sign that the muscles are not controlling the movement of that leg. When you run, that leg should just be going forwards and backwards, very little in the way of rotational movements or side to side movements. The other thing I often see is that people step over their centre line when they land. So we want to make sure when we're walking that we can control that movement. So one of the things that you can do to test that, I'm going to do it on my good leg first, is a single leg knee bend. So one leg up in the air and just doing a small knee bend or maybe even a small squat and watching how much you can control that front knee. If that front knee is rolling inwards at that really quite low sort of amplitude and low force, then the chances of those muscles being able to control the movement of that leg when you run with that high impact and repetitive nature is pretty slim. So if we look at me on the other side, the not quite as happy side, I am having a wobble and you can see that knee trying to creep in there, and I'm also hitching my hips all over the place. So that little test shows me that I'm not ready to run yet at the moment. The challenge of running when we've got this sort of pelvic drop, or maybe even a little bit of collapse in the hips, sticking the bum out, arching the lower back, is that those forces end up going somewhere. And this is kind of applicable when you walk as well as when you run, but I see it more from a running perspective. So we've looked a little bit perhaps at this tilting hip, yeah? The pelvis dropping side to side as we walk or run. Now look at what my knees do. I'll just stand in front of this wall. Look at what my knees do when I do that. Knees collapse inwards a little bit, yeah, when I try and drop those hips. The lower back ends up moving, so that low back is trying to stabilise and keep my head upright, so it's absorbing the movement. What you perhaps can't see is what my feet are doing. As that hip is dropping, that foot's collapsing inwards, the arch is collapsing a little bit on that foot. So when we haven't got that strength to hold the pelvis still and also to control the movement of that leg in the hip socket, that movement's kind of going to go somewhere else. So knees, for example, are brilliant at straightening and bending. They do not like rotating or sideways forces. So if we've got a little bit of instability in the pelvis, or if we've got rotation going on in that leg that isn't being controlled, the next potential point it's going to go to is the knees, and they're going to start getting a little bit angry. What can you do about that? First step is to talk to your physio or physical therapist. They will be able to give you lots of exercises, and I say correcting your walking gait is really key, because whatever you're doing in walking, more often than not, transfers over into your running. I think in my next video, I'm going to cover a few key exercises purely from a running point of view, and this will be assuming you've got your sign off from all of your medical professionals, as to how you can really kind of build up those glutes a little bit from a running point of view. I hope that's helpful.